Hi guys, this is Doug from the Full Earth Workshop. I know we normally work on 124 scale cars. Well, today we're working on a 132 scale COX slot car from the 60s. Let's get to it. We're going to restore this thing. Well, here is this sad little survivor from the 1960s. It's a Ford GT in 132 scale. Now, these things were really husky little cars. It's all complete except for the wheels, which we are taking from this F1 styled chassis in 132 from COX. I got a dozen of these really soft brushes to begin the chassis restoration. Ooh, nice. Take a look at the final parts here. Looks exactly like it would have looked back in 1965 in Santa Clara, California. These chassis parts from that era are also kind of cool because they're not aluminum, they're magnesium, ultra light. Let's focus our attention on the wheels made from the same magnesium material. When they first came from the factory, they weren't super shiny. If I remember correctly, they had more of a semi-gloss sheen to them. Now here is where we kind of zig instead of zag in the process. I'm using the brushes here to kind of get inside where those spokes are. I'm using 500 grit sandpaper, which then creates a very nice shine. They're actually much shinier than they were when they were brand new. And you can see the final result here in the close-up. You can see the 132 scale wheels are a little different than the 124 scale COX wheels. They're just one part. The knockoff is molded right into the wheel. I used the axle to support the wheels. Now we're going to do a little cleanup on the axle itself. Again, using 500 grit sandpaper. We do both sides. And of course, let's not leave out that really cool crown gear. We're going to use the same techniques with 500 sandpaper and the very, very soft metal brush. There are quite a few restorers that use a sandblasting technique to clean their parts, and that's an excellent way to do it. I prefer to go this way using the soft brushes because I feel it's a little more controllable. And you do have to kind of be careful either way. Just don't get too overzealous or you could actually ruin your parts. Now to keep them looking great, I recommend a satin clear finish. This can be either in lacquer or an enamel finish. You see, it does a really beautiful job. COX, along with some other manufacturers back in the day, used can motors. These were from Mabuchi, and they were size 36D. Still available in new versions, but it's really nice to get these old COX motors with the original COX sticker on them, and they seem to run forever. You can still get brushes and springs for replacements. I'm sure it might have happened once or twice, but I have never seen a broken 132 chassis. They were just too husky for the size of the car. They always seem to be in good shape. Oddly enough, I see a lot fewer of the 132 cars surviving from back then. I think mostly COX was known for their 124 scale cars that were used in the clubs at the time. COX had a track, but it wasn't nearly as good as the Revell version, so I think probably their best sales were 124. Because of that, I think it's more difficult to find 132 parts. With the resurgence of the slot car industry in 132, I think you're going to find it a lot easier in the future, finding 132 than 124, but hey, we are where we are. When you take these cars apart after 50, 60 years, you'll notice a lot of times the screws don't want to agree with you. It's better to use a cutting oil and just wait instead of trying to force it and ruining those parts because they're not going to be easy to replace. Oftentimes you don't need spacers up on the front of these cars. Just use these lock washers. Hold it very firmly with some pliers and just a quick tighten and you're ready to go. On the back, yeah, you're going to need to use some of these spacers. Now the real trouble point right now for me is finding the correct tires. Here I'm just pulling out of my parts box. They're really not the same size. And I'm going to have to search for some recreation 132 scale tires that'll fit these Cox cars. I think Paul Gage probably has some, but if you have some ideas on where I might find something like this, please put it in the comments below. My goal in these car restorations is to make them look better than they did when they came out of the factory. So a little bit shinier, things are a little bit more polished if I can. I try to make someone's first impression kind of a wow, especially when doing the bodies, adding some extra details. Here's a nice little trick that you can use when you're redoing the wires on your slot cars. If they are a little stiffer and not necessarily the Teflon type of wire, you can use your electric drill to tighten them up. Now, don't do it too tightly or you'll break the wire. This should add a nice little twist to your arsenal of techniques. You know, I think we've come a long way in the development of the guides during the last 50 years. These were a little bit difficult. First of all, they required COX branded braid that had the little brass eyelet on the end. These are still available in packages OEM, and that's where I bought these. But today, it seems so much easier. Some cars like Carrera even have 4 of them. One thing that impresses me so much about these Cox cars and some of the Tamiya cars that were made is just the incredible details and the great materials that were used. Those are just a few of the cars that inspired my team and I here at Full Earth Workshop to design a brand new slot car system. If you're interested in checking it out, just go to www.fullearthworkshop.com and sign up for free to find out more. They should be available very soon. We have 3 very well-used Ford GT bodies for 132 cars. You'll see that a lot of the parts are missing, but when you take all 3, we have every one of the parts. So we can do little molds and copy them, and we'll have more details on this car and others coming soon on Full Earth Workshop. See you then.